For the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Budget and Finance, that is Honorable Dr. Energy Mutori. Very good afternoon to you, Honorable.
Good afternoon, thank you.
Yes, let's get to talk about the expectations from stakeholders and from your consultations. What are they expecting on this mid-term budget review?
Yes, as you are aware, this is a mid-term budget review, and the Minister is reviewing the policies that we have implemented since the beginning of the year. And as a Committee on Budget, Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, we have engaged stakeholders who include the Chamber of Commerce, the ZNCC, and among other stakeholders. They are expecting the IMTT to be revised downwards from the current 2% maybe to a figure which is just above 1% or below 1%. They are also expecting export surrender requirements to be reduced from 30% to at least 20% to ensure that the ease of doing business is enhanced. So basically, we are looking at policies that or measures that ensure that businesses are viable and businesses can have a conducive environment for profitability and for them to willfully contribute to our revenue generation. So these are some of the things that we expect. The Minister is also expected to also adjust tax measures or tax bans in terms of sugar tax, for instance, and other taxes that are affecting like corporate tax and so on. So we are expecting all those things to be addressed as raised by the stakeholders.
All right, talking about the budget strategy outline that we're hearing that will be presented today, what can you say? Do you have any comment on the budget strategy outline?
Yes, this is a statement where the Minister is outlining the strategy that is aiming to achieve in the following year. So as you are aware, we are going to be gathering again at the end of this year to discuss the priorities of our budget, where money is to be spent, which areas are to be prioritized, and we expect that the Minister will do a highlight in this statement as well.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. That's the chairperson for the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Finance and Budget, Honorable Dr. Energy Mutori, right here. We shall continue with the live coverage of today's proceedings.
And of course, they are highlighting the significance of the midterm budget review or statement rather that will be put forward by the Minister of Finance, Honorable Mthuli Ncube. The key takeaways, of course, from there speak towards Zimbabwe's alignment towards Vision 2030's establishment of the National Development Strategies extended from NDS 1 all the way into NDS 2, which would be in completion, of course, in 2030. All this in an effort to be able to ensure all Zimbabweans benefit from an upper to middle income society. This, of course, positioning growth within various sectors, most notably infrastructure development, manufacturing, and of course, agricultural production. The mining sector also finding key steps towards incorporating value chain based models. We've seen an expansion there, especially within base metal exploration, extending from, of course, to chrome and lithium, the value addition components being critical towards ensuring that Zimbabwe does meet its $12 billion target for the mining sector. Agro-innovation also finding key ways for development trajectory meetings there. And of course, the incorporation of Zimbabwe's climate-proof program, that being Pfumvudza in Twasa, celebrated rather as a means, of course, to address food insecurity and also address issues around national development, national determined contributions rather, NDSCs. Key takeaways that we can look forward to, of course, would be shared during the course of the broadcast. Take advantage of our social media platform at ZBC News Online, as we are currently giving you updates from Mount Hampton and, of course, the Victoria Falls, where currently COP15 is underway. We also do implore you once again to keep sending us your questions, comments, and your contributions during the course of the broadcast. As was highlighted earlier on, shortly, the Minister of Finance, Honorable Mthuli Ncube, would be making his key presentations. We'll take a short break and be right back with more. Stay tuned.
Mana Pools National Park was designated in 1963 as a national park, and it was also recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1984, and was also recognized as a Ramsar Site in 2013.
Deep in the heart of northern Zimbabwe, where the mighty Zambezi River flows, lies a haven of pristine wilderness and exceptional wildlife. Welcome to Mana Pools, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and Ramsar Site, teeming with life and natural beauty. The name Mana means four in the local language, referring to these four large permanent oxbow lakes, remnants of the Zambezi River's historical course. These pools are crucial for wildlife, especially during the dry season, providing a lifeline for the incredible diversity of animals that call this place home.
The word Mana comes from the four pools, one of which you are seeing from the background, which is Chisasiko Pool, and we've got the Long Pool on the south, and Green Pool and Chine Pool. Mana Pools as a Ramsar site, it was recognized due to its importance with wetlands. As you all know, with the Zambezi River that is flowing through Mana Pools and the floodplain that is forming these four pools that are more supportive in terms of water supply for our biodiversity. It is also recognized as a biodiversity hotspot with different number of herbivores and carnivores and bird species. In terms of herbivores, generally we've got the largest mammal, which are the elephants, and we've got the buffaloes, and we've got the kudus, and we've got the elands and the nyala, and so on. And in terms of carnivores, we've got the most famous, the lions, we've got the leopards, we've got the cheetahs, we've got the wild dogs, which are more endangered. We've got also the hyenas.
But Mana Pools is not just a haven for large mammals. Over 450 resident and migratory bird species breed in these wetlands, including the vibrant carmine bee-eaters, the charming Nyasa lovebirds, and the elegant rock pranticles.
Mana Pools is identified as an important bird area. We've got the waterbirds, the African jacana, the grey herons, we've got the marabou storks, which are also endangered. We've got also the vultures are also key here in Mana Pools ecosystem.
The Zambezi River and its associated pools support populations of Nile crocodiles and various fish species. For the adventurous, Mana Pools offers a unique wilderness experience with opportunities for canoeing and exploring the river's tranquil waters.
Mana Pools is a tourist destination which is recognized worldwide, which attracts a lot of tourists, which brings revenue to our economy. And also socially, Mana Pools is a place where people can recreate, reconnect with nature. Mana Pools is also a cultural heritage site where you can have the history of the people who are living here in Mana Pools. As you can see, the Chisasiko Pool has got a lot of history behind this pool. There were people living just around this pool, and they require that history to keep on going, and protecting this landscape also help to conserve that cultural heritage.
For those seeking close encounters with wildlife in their natural habitats, Mana Pools is a true paradise. Whether you're a seasoned safari goer or just starting out, this incredible ecosystem is sure to leave you in awe.
The Zambezi River and the four pools here in Mana Pools, they support a wide range of biodiversity, from the aquatic species like fish, tilapia species you can find from the Zambezi River, and also within these four pools. And also these four pools serves as a water source for most of our animals, from the herbivores to the carnivores. They all rely on these four pools during the wet season and during the dry season. These four pools support quite a number of hippopotamus. Even along the Zambezi River, there's quite a number of hippopotamus. These hippopotamus, they are supported by the water sources that are here as their habitat, and they also use the floodplain as their feeding ground.
Mana Pools is a key component of the Lower Zambezi Mana Pools Transfrontier Conservation Area, a massive transboundary landscape in the SADC region, a place where nature's beauty and wonder await, and where the wild heart of Africa beats strong.
Thank you so much there, of course, to the Mana Pools, which contribute significantly towards the Ramsar Convention's current engagements. We're now going to be crossing over back to Mount Hampton, where the Honourable Minister of Finance is currently getting ready for his presentation.
Improved electricity generation at Kariba Hydropower Station. This, combined with sustained economic stability, has provided a conducive domestic economic environment. Madam Speaker, ma'am, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, a recipient of a Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences, postulates that, I quote, sustained macroeconomic stability is essential for achieving long-term economic development and reducing poverty, and we want to follow that path of sustained macroeconomic stability going forward. A few words about the global and regional economic outlook, Madam Speaker, ma'am. The global economic growth is now projected at 2.8%, down from 3.2%. We made that forecast in October 2024, and things have changed. And this is according to the IMF World Economic Outlook report of April 2025. This downward revision is on account of anticipated increases in trade tariffs and geopolitical tensions in Europe and in the Middle East. Madam Speaker, there is a slide, I hope it can be seen from that far in terms of the numbers. You can see that indeed the growth projection for 2025 is 2.8%. Advanced economies like the US at 1.8%, Euro area 0.8%, Sub-Saharan Africa 3.8%, and Zimbabwe at 6%. China at 4% economic growth for 2025. In Sub-Saharan Africa, economic growth is projected to decline from the initial projection of 4.2% in October 2024, down to 3.8% by year end. The downward revision is attributed to the negative effects of weather. On the screen is additional numbers on pertaining to Sub-Saharan Africa and then also some of the SADC countries. Similarly, GDP growth of the Southern Africa Development Community SADC is projected at 2.8% in 2025. Again, this is a downward revision from the October 24 forecast of 3.3%. And again, you can see how Zimbabwe is juxtaposed against its peers in the region, Botswana with a negative growth rate of 0.4%, which is slightly worse than last year at minus 3%, or slightly better actually, but still negative. Lesotho 1.5%, for example, Zimbabwe 6%, Tanzania 6%. So those are some of the faster growing countries. Turning on to the domestic economic developments and outlook, Madam Speaker, before I turn to domestic economic developments, let me take this opportunity to brief you on the recent GDP rebasing exercise and the results of the economic census carried out by Zimstat, our statistics bureau. The size of the economy is now approximately $45.7 billion US, up from the earlier estimate of $35.2 billion, and this is a 2024 figure. This implies that both GDP and GNI per capita are now slightly above $3,000 US per capita. Madam Speaker, again, I've got a table that shows the old figures for 2023, the new figures for 2023, and then the 2024 old figures and new figures. Around 15% of GDP from historical levels of about 18%. Public debt to GDP in US dollar terms also declines to about 46.5% from a level above 60%. And it's also now well below the sub-Saharan average of 61%. Madam Speaker, ma'am, in 2013, the debt to GDP ratio average for Africa was of the order of 30%, but now it is 61%. And I'm pleased to say Zimbabwe is much better at about 46.5% as of end of 2024. In terms of sectoral contribution, the structure of the economy is now dominated by the manufacturing sector at 15.3%, mining and quarrying at 14.5%, wholesale and retail trade at 11.9%, financial and insurance services at 10.8%, and the agricultural sector at 9.3%. Here I'm just highlighting the top 5 sectors in a new GDP structure. I've compared that table, we compare the new structure compared to the old sectoral contribution. And it's pleasing to see that sectors that are value adding, such as manufacturing, are now contributing above mere retail, the retail sector, which was the biggest before. Madam Speaker, ma'am, now I turn to the domestic economic developments during the first half of 2025. Given the positive economic developments during the period January to June, we are confident that the projected economic growth of 6% alluded to in 2025 national budget is achievable. And again on that screen, Madam Speaker, we show the final figure at the bottom of 6%, but then also show the various sectors that contribute to that growth. Notice that the bulk of this growth is really coming from recovery in the agricultural sector, which has recovered from a growth rate of minus 18.1% in 2024. And this year it should be up to positive 21.5%. Of course, the other sectors are all showing positive growth, but that's the sector that is contributing the most due to its spectacular recovery this year. All sectors of the economy are expected to record positive growth in 2025, mainly on account of a favorable agriculture season, improved electricity generation, stable exchange rate and inflation. This is notwithstanding declining international mineral commodity prices and a subdued global economic environment. Let me turn to inflation and the exchange rate. Madam Speaker, ma'am, month-on-month ZIG inflation has been stable during the first half of the year, as it averaged around 0.5% per month. And on an annual basis, the rate rose to 85.7% in April 2025 to 92.5% in June, largely driven by the base effect. The annual inflation rate is expected to decline significantly from October 2025 as the base effect subsides. Here we had a sharp depreciation in the currency in September last year. That's the base effect. That's having an effect on year-on-year inflation, Madam Speaker, ma'am. We can see again a chart of what inflation looks like on a month-on-month basis, that we are far from the peak that we saw in October, when I was at 0.5%, big improvement. The stability of the exchange rate explains the low average month-on-month inflation of 0.5% experienced over the past 5 months of the year. The exchange rate has averaged $1 to 26.7 ZIG on the willing buyer, willing seller foreign exchange market over that same period. Let me turn to the external sector. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the country's external sector position has demonstrated remarkable resilience, as evidenced by the notable increase in foreign currency receipts, which rose by 30.2% to $6 billion for the period from January to May 2025. This is compared to $4.9 billion received during the same period in 2024. This again clear from the slide. We can see the biggest change was in export proceeds there of, was in loan proceeds, 35.1%, and then we have got even remittances, diaspora remittances, with a growth rate of 9.8%. The total showing a very healthy growth in our external position. The current account balance remained in surplus during the first quarter of 2025, registering $19.9 million US. To year end, the current account surplus is projected to reach about $621.7 million US dollars. The growth in foreign currency receipts is primarily being driven by an increase in export receipts, particularly in gold exports, which was $2 billion US during the first 6 months of this year. Diaspora remittances is at $924.2 million US during the first 5 months, and loans to the private sector at $1.1 billion US during the first 5 months. I now turn to monetary and financial sector developments. The banking sector remains stable, underpinned by robust capitalization, satisfactory asset quality and profitability, as well as strong liquidity positions. Credit to the private sector grew by 20% compared to December 2024. This is by May 2025 figures. This was largely driven by targeted credit to the productive sectors of the economy. In terms of asset quality, non-performing loans stood at 3.3% as of March 2025, which are below the 5% international threshold or benchmark. The monetary developments, both reserve and let me take that again. On monetary developments, both reserve and broad money growth during the first half of the year were in line with the observed and desired growth path of the economy and inflation target. A few words on the stock markets. There is growing interest by companies to participate on the stock market, is indicated by increase of the number of listings on both the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange ZSC and the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange VFX. As a result, both the ZSC and VFX recorded positive turnover during the first 5 months of the year. I now turn to public debt. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the country's stock of public and publicly guaranteed debt stood at 576.5 billion ZiG as at end of March 2025. The debt was comprised of external debt totaling 337.7 billion ZiG and domestic debt amounting to 238.8 billion ZiG, representing 58.6% and 41.6% respectively. There's a slide there 11 showing those figures. In US dollar terms, the total public and publicly guaranteed debt as at end of March 2025 amounted to $21.5 billion US, comprising external debt of 12.6 billion and domestic debt at 8.9 billion. This brings the debt to GDP ratio to 44% as of 31 March 2025. In this regard, government is implementing the arrears clearance and debt resolution roadmap in order to restore debt sustainability and unlock critical external financing needed for the country's development programs. Let me now turn to the 2025 National Budget Fiscal Framework. Madam Speaker, the 2025 National Budget approved by Parliament on 18 December 2024 was premised on a macro fiscal framework with the projected GDP growth of 6%. And we can see that on that table on the screen. And then revenue collections were 270.3 billion ZiG, or 19.9% of GDP, and overall expenditures at 276.4 billion ZiG, which is 20.1% of GDP, as well as the budget deficit of 6.1 billion ZiG, which is 0.4% of GDP. So that's the macro fiscal framework. In US dollar terms, the fiscal framework translates to revenues of $7.5 billion with expenditures of $7.7 billion and a budget deficit of $168.4 million, which is 0.4% of GDP. Let me now turn to the budget performance so far. Madam Speaker, during the first half of the year of 2025, both inflation and the exchange rate were relatively more stable than envisaged. The budget has therefore been performing below projections in terms of revenues in local currency. Although performance was significantly above target in US dollar or foreign currency terms, it's mainly an exchange rate effect. Revenue collections during the period January to June amounted to 101.2 billion ZiG, or 3.7 billion US dollars equivalent. This is against a target of 118.1 billion ZiG, or 3.3 billion US dollars equivalent. While expenditures were 98 billion ZiG, which is 3.7 billion US dollars, against a target of 127.5 billion ZiG, which is equivalent to 3.5 billion US dollars. Again, those figures are shown on the screen. Madam Speaker, ma'am, in terms of budget utilization up to June 2025, 35% of the appropriated and approved budget has been spent. And there on the screen again you can see how it's been spent across various ministries. Some of the ministries have been utilizing it quite fast, the high burn rate of their budget, and some of them not as high of a burn rate. But we will endeavor to push forward to make sure that everyone catches up with those who are moving faster. Madam Speaker, the remaining balance of the budget, which is 65%, we feel is therefore adequate to cater for government's operations to year-end in the absence of any external or domestic significant shocks. Let me give a highlight of some of the key areas. Let me start with social services. Madam Speaker, ma'am, during the first 6 months of the year, government spent 26.6 billion towards the provision of social services under the following sectors: education at 16.1 billion ZiG, health at 7 billion ZiG, and social protection at 3.5 billion ZiG. Zooming onto education, 16.1 billion was expended on the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, of which 12.1 billion went towards compensation of employees for the period January to May 2025. This also includes resources meant to support various programs such as the school feeding program, BEAM and others, and the procurement of sanitary ware. Government also supported the ongoing construction of 5 new schools, namely the E.D. Mnangagwa Secondary School in Mutoko, the Mariga Primary School in Mbire, the Twai Primary School in Bulilima, Sonkwa Primary School in Binga, and Mafungauta Secondary School in Gokwe South. This is the Twai Secondary School in the Bulilima area. As you can see, it's now at roof level, but the roof is still to come on, but we're almost there. Let me turn to the higher and tertiary education sector, Madam Speaker, ma'am. In 2025 national budget, the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development was allocated a total of 5.7 billion ZiG to enhance access to quality, equitable and inclusive education, including students with disabilities. As at the end of June 2025, 1.6 billion had been spent on operations of universities and colleges. On infrastructure, focus was on completing ongoing projects at the University of Zimbabwe, at the National University of Science and Technology, NUST, Midland State University, Bindura University of Science Education, and Gwanda State University. I think that's the Techno Innovation Center at NUST. And the next slide is the Great Zimbabwe University Chivi Traditional Grains Processing Plant to support innovation in that sector and beneficiation in that sector. I now turn to the health sector. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the health sector received support amounting to 7 billion ZiG, with the bulk, which is 5.7 billion ZiG, expended on compensation of employees, and 1.1 billion ZiG was spent on goods and services, including 0.6 billion ZiG for procurement of medical supplies, and services. Madam Speaker, ma'am, it's again worth pausing. These, letters are, letters are a little bit small, but if they were bigger, you would see that there's some very important projects that are being undertaken. For instance, renovations being carried out at Salamugabe Hospital, and then at UBH, the construction of water tank, Bybridge Hospital, bore was drilled, and then in Gwanda, in Gokwe North Health. So a lot is happening in some of these key and critical health sector institutions, Madam Speaker, ma'am, across the entire country. Let me turn to some of the social benefits, just to mention that, Madam Speaker, cumulative disbursements towards supporting vulnerable members of our society stood at 3.5 billion towards programs such as the Vulnerable Agriculture Input Scheme, or from Vudra Intrasa program, the BEAM program, Food Deficit Mitigation program, and supporting our War Veterans Affairs Fund. Turning to women, gender equity, and SMEs, Madam Speaker, during the first half of the year, government supported gender mainstreaming interventions with the objective of, one of the objectives is to eradicate gender-based violence, GBV, and here we expended an amount of 98.3 million ZIG. This went towards the construction of one-stop centers, capacitation of the National Handicrafts Center of Zimbabwe, and provision of workspaces for women engaging in various businesses, among others. And that's a picture of the textile manufacturing sector in Bulawayo to support women's entrepreneurship activities. Turning to youth, sports, arts and culture area, here, Madam Speaker, I want to highlight work on the National Sports Stadium. The process of refurbishing the National Sports Stadium is now at an advanced stage, with the following notable achievements having been realized. The installation of bucket seats is now at 90% completion. Reconstruction works on new turf currently underway, with works currently at 40% completion. Completion of the installation of turnstiles at Gate 1 entrance, and then completion of the cabling and tubing for the venue operating systems, and finally, restoration of the water reticulation system, which is in progress. And that's one area where we are pushing hard to complete. The budget also extended, I must say, 28.1 million, Madam Speaker, towards this issue of drug and substance abuse, which is mainly affecting our youth. Let me turn to veterans of the liberation struggle. In line with the Second Republic's vision of inclusive economic participation and empowerment of veterans of the liberation struggle, government operationalized the Veterans Investment Corporation and launched a livestock person scheme as well. In addition, the government allocated residential stands and undertook training programs to our veterans community as part of empowerment initiatives. Government also extended resources towards benefits of veterans of the liberation struggle, inclusive of education, medical, and funeral assistance. Let me give you a picture of the overall infrastructure expenditure, which includes obviously ICT and the digital economy as well. Madam Speaker, cumulative expenditures on all infrastructure projects to June 2025 amounted to 15.7 billion ZIG, targeting projects in the energy, transport, water and sanitation, housing, health, education, and agricultural sectors, as well as devolution. And those figures are shown on the screen. A further amount of 2.1 billion was expended on capacitation of ministries, departments, and agencies through the procurement of vehicles, furniture, and equipment. Turning to the transport sector specifically, Madam Speaker, a cumulative amount of 7.9 billion was spent on the transport sector, mainly towards the road development program. During the period under review, priority was accorded to the completion of new modern multi-level Trabablas interchange, which was commissioned by His Excellency the President, Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, on 30th of May 2025, and you can see a picture of the majestic Tablablas interchange here in our capital city, Harare. And more of these Tablablases will be built right across the country. The rehabilitation and upgrading of the Bulawayo Victoria Falls Road has commenced, Madam Speaker, ma'am, with contractors already on site and are currently carrying out preliminary works on multi-segments of the highway, including land clearance to create some detours. The Rural Infrastructure Development Agency, RIDA, rehabilitated and upgraded various road projects across the country. Madam Speaker, again, if you turn to the screen, these are some of the roads, for example, the Chipinge Mount Selinda Road in Manicaland in Chipinge District, 10 kilometers was completed by RIDA. I'll just pick another on Bulawayo Nkai, which is a very emotional project. There's some movement, 3.6 kilometers has been primed. And then Nyanga Ruangwe Road, for example, in Nyanga, 10 kilometers has been completed. And on the Gokwe Road, 40 kilometers overlay with asphalt has been also completed. So RIDA is doing its work, Madam Speaker, ma'am, and supporting the Ministry of Transport as well as Sinara in our road development program. I now turn to the water and sanitation area. Madam Speaker, ma'am, during the period under review, an amount of 3.9 billion was released towards water and sanitation sector, focusing on dam construction, rural bore drilling, and establishment of village business units in order to enhance access to clean water and promote local economic development. The main priority projects were Kunzi and Gwai Shangani dams, which are essential for improving water supply in major centers. So that's Kunzi Dam to supply Harare with water, Madam Speaker, ma'am, under construction. Then that's the Gwai Shangani Dam, which again is still under construction and will complete it. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the Presidential Rural Development Program targeted drilling and installation of solarized boreholes, water supply and establishment of village business units. To date, the following milestones have been achieved throughout the country under this program. You can see already the Nyamuroro Secondary School in the Gokwe North. That's a village business unit. But overall, we have 296 balls that have been drilled, 362 balls that have been installed, 26 water supply projects established, 182 village business units established, and Nyamuroro is one example. And we've also established 152, or rather, the establishment of 152 business units is currently underway. Those are in progress, and we'll report on them when I present in November, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Let me turn to the energy sector. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the Rural Electrification Fund, REF, expended 16.3 million ZIG, 216.3 million ZIG, enabling the completion of 114 energy projects in primary and secondary schools, rural health centers, government extension offices, business centers, and villages, among others. And you can see these units, 114 in total. If you go down to the bottom right, extreme right, province by province, you can see where these projects have been installed: primary school, secondary, rural, and so forth, totally 114. Meanwhile, and this is an example of the Boni Rural Health Center, for example. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe has developed an energy compact with the African Development Bank and the World Bank under the Mission 300 initiative. The aim is to ensure all citizens have access to reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy by 2030. And this energy compact is due to be signed off and launched in an event during the UN General Assembly in September next month, or rather in September, in New York. It will be launched by our head of state, and he will join other heads of state in doing that. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the budget and the Universal Services Fund, I'm now talking to the ICT issues. The budget and the Universal Services Fund provided resources amounting to 436.9 million and 54.3 million ZIG, respectively, to support the development of digital infrastructure. Notable progress was made in modernizing government ICT systems through the establishment of a secure smart government private cloud. The Ministry of ICT successfully connected 30 health facilities in Gokwe North using low Earth orbit satellite broadband, a milestone highlighted during the 45th independence celebrations. In addition, efforts to upgrade the National Data Center to Tier 4 standards are ongoing, targeting 99.999% uptime for critical government digital systems. A bit more on information publicity and broadcasting, Madam Speaker, ma'am. To enhance access to information and citizens' participation in national governance and promotion of real-time dissemination, government is implementing the ZIM Digital Phase 2, focusing on the installation of transmitters across the country. On the other hand, the Lieja Community Radio Station was operationalized in Wange in February 2025. Government also launched the media policy during the first half of the year. The policy is designed to promote media excellence, diversity, and general national development. A few words on housing delivery, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Government spent 746.7 million ZIG towards housing delivery during the period under review. But I can assure you, Madam Speaker, ma'am, the private sector spent a lot more, so did private citizens, on housing development. This enabled the completion and commissioning of, for example, of Mtawa Tower Magistrate Court in Uzumba, Maramba, Fungwe. You can see this is the Mtawa Tower Magistrate Court, for example. In addition, and this is our Tombo of flats, and then the recently commissioned Chimoyo flats here in Harare at the police depot. In addition, renovations and construction of diplomatic properties were undertaken in Abuja, Berlin, London, and Pretoria. A few words about an important sector, which is around peace and security. In order to enhance peace and security of the country, an amount of 14 billion ZIG was expended on the security sector. The resources were spent on salaries and allowances, on mobility and housing, and in providing tools of trade, as well as servicing of equipment and infrastructure development. Development partners, Madam Speaker, also made a contribution to our resources, amounting to $148.1 million during the first half of the year. And this was mainly targeted at our health sector, emergency response, and the education sectors. Again, there's a slide showing the various contributions from development partners across various sectors. Let me turn to an issue that will become a key focus area in the second half of this year, Madam Speaker, the issue of the cost of doing business. During the second half of the year, government will be seized with the implementation of the doing business reforms aimed at reducing cost and enhancing competitiveness. Meanwhile, government has with immediate effect begun the process of reviewing various regulatory fees and charges. In addition, the number of bureaucratic steps and compliance requirements will be drastically reduced, and we'll be making announcements as we go along, sector by sector. And we want to begin with the agricultural sector with announcement in the next week or two. On the fiscal front, government will continue to review the existing tax system with a view to reducing reported and observed distortions, grant the necessary supportive regime for business growth and competitiveness within and on the regional and international markets without compromising fiscal. A medium-term revenue strategy that clearly defines the growth trajectory for the revenue to GDP ratio and specific strategies to achieve the desired outcome, including efforts to bring the non-compliant informal sector or small businesses, I call them, bringing those into the formal economy. Let me give an update on the formulation of NDS 2, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Madam Speaker, ma'am, government is in the process of formulating the National Development Strategy 2, NDS 2. 10 national priority areas have been identified, and chairpersons and co-chairpersons for each of the thematic working groups have been appointed. Terminal evaluation of NDS 1 is underway, which will inform NDS 2 formulation by assessing the achievements, lessons learned, and implementation gaps of NDS 1. The public consultations have begun with the launch of the final blueprint set for November 2025, just before the presentation of the 2026 national budget. There is therefore going to be a strong link between the 2026 national budget and the National Development Strategy 2 or NDS 2. I now transition to the conclusion, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the performance of the economy in the budget during the first half of the year was within the approved levels by Parliament. The macro-fiscal framework underpinning the approved 2025 national budget remains relevant and still supports the targeted project and programs. To ensure that the fiscal policy is complementary to monetary policy in order to sustain the prevailing price and exchange rate stability, government will continue to implement prudent budgeting policy stance, which ensures that all expenditures are strictly guided by the performance of revenues. This entails a continuity of the principle of living within our means. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the country has enjoyed economic stability during the first half of the year, and I want to assure you and the honourable members here present and the public at large that both the fiscal and monetary authorities are going to stay the course. We all understand the costs and pain of instability, and so we cannot afford any policy slippages. During the second half of the year, government will be seized with the implementation of the ease of doing business reforms, targeting the reduction of fees and charges as well as regulatory requirements, a number of steps in acquiring licenses, for example. This will significantly reduce the operational costs of the industry to enable it to compete both domestically and internationally. Madam Speaker, ma'am, we have a situation in some sectors where players or private players are only profitable if they don't comply with regulatory requirements. If they comply, they make losses, and that situation needs to be changed. We will lower the cost of doing business. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I now commend the 2025 mid-term budget and economic review to this august House in compliance with the law, and it is accompanied by the following documents: the 2025 mid-term budget and economic review statement; 2, the 2026 budget strategy paper; 3, the citizen document which simplifies the mid-term budget and economic review statement; and then 4, the public debt report to Parliament for 2024 financial year; and then finally a booklet on the structured dialogue platform on Zimbabwe's arrears clearance and debt resolution process. This is not a requirement for tabling in Parliament, but I thought that we should keep our honourable members of Parliament informed. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I thank you. Tinotenda, siyabonga.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of Finance. The question before the House is a motion by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion that this House takes note of the 2025 mid-term budget and economic review and the 2026 budget strategy paper. Honorable members, as per our procedure, honorable members need to go and read and research so that when Parliament resumes, you will be prepared to debate the mid-term budget and economic review and the strategy paper. Is there any debate? I acknowledge the leader of government business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that debate do now adjourn.
It has been moved that the debate be now adjourned. Is there any debate? I put the question that the debate is be now adjourned. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the debate is adjourned. What day, Honorable Minister?
No, to 19th of August, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
The debate is adjourned to 19th of August. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House do now adjourn.
It has been moved that the House do not adjourn. Is there any debate? I put the question that the House do not adjourn. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the House is adjourned. To what day, Honorable Minister?
To the 19th of August, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The House is adjourned to the 19th of August.
As you can appreciate, there, of course, highlighted key areas around the budget review by the Minister of Finance, Honorable Thuli Ncube. Key areas of development, of course, emphasizing around a meeting of the National Development Strategy to key steps that would allow that, of course, to allow Zimbabwe to achieve its middle to upper income status by the year 2030. Now, the midterm review, of course, underscores the government's commitment to sustainable development, prioritizing investor-friendly reforms in mining and taxation, climate, smart agriculture to ensure food security, prudent fiscal management to consolidate the gains made by the ZIG. And of course, the Finance Minister's review set to reinforce Zimbabwe's economic turnaround, building on a hard-won stability to deliver growth of jobs and resilience. Now, the energy sector also looking at addressing issues of power shortages through a renewed focus on renewable energy projects. Health funding also seeing swift action to safeguard HIV and TB programs despite external aid cuts across the board. I also look at inclusive growth with the adjusting of tax policies to protect low-income earners while expanding the revenue base. Now, revenue mobilization looks at a projection of 150% revenue growth. This is from 2024 with the targeting, of course, of 276.4 billion ZIG, that extending also to a strategic focus of also formalizing the informal sector, which is currently now valued at 44.7 $10 billion after GDP rebasing. Extending from the, of course, the key achievements and the positive developments highlighted, of course, looking at the stabilization of the economy and also looking at the introduction of the SIM gold currency from April of 2024, having delivered the macroeconomic stability, slashing monthly inflation to 0.5% from February to July of this year. Policies, of course, mandating a 50% corporate tax payments in the SIC, also boosting domestic currency demand and reducing dollarization. Now, ambitious rather GDP targets of 6% for 2025, driven by mining and investment, targeting $5 billion United States dollars and agricultural recovery, including the post-drought deficit. Once again, we do implore you to be part of the conversation. Send us your questions, comments, and your contributions on our social media platform at ZBC News Online, as we always do appreciate hearing from you. Thank you so much there to our team at Mount Hampton, of course, giving us some cross-country broadcasts from Mount Hampton back to Pocket City. Of course, now we'll be taking you, of course, all the way back to Mount Hampton. We'll be joined by Rumuzai Chakanza, who would be giving us, of course, some of the appreciations from the review given by the Minister of Finance and Investment Development. Now we'll be crossing over straight to Mount Hampton for more of the updates.
Hello, and once again, thank you so much for joining us right here at ZBC TV. Of course, that was the live coverage of the mid-term budget review presentation by Professor Mthuli Ncube, who is the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion. He presented that budget there, and of course, the various stakeholders were present today. That includes honorable ministers, honorable members of Parliament, the Senate, various stakeholders, even the public, the private sector was also present today. And of course, that the question and answer session was adjourned until the National Assembly session takes place, so that people can go and take a look at the budget, so that they can review it themselves and come back with the questions that they need to ask. So quite a number of things were presented in that review, including the installation of bugged seats at the National Sports Stadium. It's still work in progress, but still there is things that people have to note, like the bugged seats which have already been put in place there. We talk of the health sector, which has also received quite a number of assistance for the procurement of medication. We also talk of Binga, Gokwe health facilities are being enhanced right there. We also talk of road rehabilitation that's currently taking place all over Zimbabwe, as well as the Trabablas interchange, which was also commissioned this year. So there's a number of items that have been successfully implemented. We'll talk of also the Reader, which has rehabilitated various roads in Chipinge, Mount Salinda, Bulawayo Nkai, Kwekwe, Gokwe. Those are some of the things that need to be noted. Also talking of issues to do with people getting clean water and adequate water supply. There has been construction of dams, money being channeled towards that, as well as a village-based unit. We also talk of Boni Rural Healthcare Center, which was also electrified. We're talking of leaving no one and no place behind, something that even the SADC, Southern African Development Community, is talking about and also aiming towards. And here in Zimbabwe, the Second Republic, this is what is aiming to be done. And we also talk of the education sector. We also talk of children with disability to also receive great and adequate health facilities to do with education, as they also need a fair share of adequate facilities to do with education. Also, we talk of ongoing projects at the Middle State University, NAST, Bindura, Gwanda, UZ, Great Zimbabwe as well. Money, the budget has been channeled towards renovations has been challenged towards innovation in those universities. And we also get to note of some of the things that we're talking about. That's in the first half, the budget performed below projection in local currency and slightly above projection in foreign currency. And this is due to the effect of exchange rates. So right now, people have already gone out of the August House, and people are discussing. We are waiting for the minister to get his comment on this review. It is the 31st of July 2025, and we're right here at Mount Abden at the new Parliament building in Zimbabwe. Thank you so much for watching, and you can still follow the proceedings on ZBC News Online, as we are also live on Facebook. Earlier on, we heard from Dr. Energy Mutodi telling us about what other stakeholders were anticipating and what they were also looking forward to. But right now, we cross over to the August House, where we will now cross over to our studio in Poketsel.
Thank you so much there, Rumbi, for giving us the rundown on the current review of the monetary budget statement. And of course, that being brought to you by the Minister of Finance, Honorable Mthuli Ncube. Of course, a key takeaways from there, of course, is seeing Zimbabwe establish its key position of attaining middle income status, upper to middle income status rather, by 2030, and also ensuring that it does meet its fiscal prospective growth targets. Most poignantly, looking at the stabilization of local currency through the adoption of the ZIG, slashing a monthly inflation rather to 0.5% during the period of February up until July. Policies, of course, mandating corporate tax payments in a ZIG. This, of course, boosting the boosting domestic currency demands. Also get a growth oriented reforms, look at ambitious GDP targets of 6% for 2025, driven by mining investments. Of course, targeting the $5 billion agricultural recovery. US dollar target rather, looking at agricultural recovery from the post-drought. Tax systems, of course, overhaul underway, looking to also be able to ensure that it does attract investment, aligning with the President Mnangagwa's reform agenda. Looking at the projected 150% revenue growth within 2024, targeted at 276.4 billion. That's about 7.5 billion United States dollars. Strategic focus, of course, on formalizing the informal sector to also tap into the $44.7 billion GDP rebasing. Once again, we do implore you to keep being part of the conversation. Send us your questions, comments, and your contributions on our social media platforms, as we always do appreciate hearing from you. Of course, giving you broadcasts from around the nation in Mount Hampton, and of course, extending all the way to Victoria Falls, a resort town where the conference of the convention of parties, which aligned to the Ramsar Convention, COP15. They'll be also giving us, of course, some of the updates from the Victoria Falls Declaration, which was currently established during the period of the convention. And of course, looking at the preservation and conservation of wetlands, incorporating biodiversity as a key takeaway rather from the engagements, and incorporation of also of a bird wildlife inclusion in the varying wetland sites around the country. Discussions around those, of course, will be extended post convention. Also looking at Zimbabwe's key role in having a presidency of the Ramsar Convention, having taken that from China, and will be extending all the way up until 2028. Once again, extending, of course, a whole host of areas of focus during the course of our live broadcast, where we have given you, of course, the rundown from Mount Hampton. And we'll be crossing over there a bit later on, rather, to appreciate some of the sentiments that have been shared during the course of that broadcast. Extending, of course, also to the Ramsar Convention currently underway in the resort town of Victoria Falls. And, of course, some of the key areas of focus looking at sustainability around our wetland developments in and around the country. We had key discussions in studio during the course of this week, looking at the sustainable development of wetland preservation, and of course the preservation of not only wetlands but biodiversity. This being, of course, the incorporation of bird wildlife, which would be able to allow us, of course, to be able to extend some of our national determined contributions, which would in turn benefit Zimbabwe's position in alignment to the Paris Climate Agreement, and of course also other developments around the carbon registry, this being a key tenet of the Paris Climate Agreement. And of course we'll be now looking at some of those revelations that came from COP15, and also looking closer to home right here in Harare at the Monavale Flay, and some of its key takeaways from there. Let's have a look.
Mana Pools National Park was designated in 1963 as a national park, and it was also recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1984, and was also recognized as a Ramsar Site in 2013.
Deep in the heart of northern Zimbabwe, where the mighty Zambezi River flows, lies a haven of pristine wilderness and exceptional wildlife. Welcome to Mana Pools, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and Ramsar Site, teeming with life and natural beauty. The name Mana means four in the local language, referring to these four large permanent oxbow lakes, remnants of the Zambezi River's historical course. These pools are crucial for wildlife, especially during the dry season, providing a lifeline for the incredible diversity of animals that call this place home.
The word mana comes from the four pools, one of which you are seeing from the background, which is Chisasiko Pool, and of course the long pool on the south, and Green Pool and Chine Pool. Mana Pools as a Ramsar site, it was recognized due to its importance with wetlands. As you all know, with the Zambezi River that is flowing through Mana Pools and the floodplain that is forming these four pools that are more supportive in terms of water supply for our biodiversity. It is also recognized as a biodiversity hotspot with different number of herbivores and carnivores and bird species. In terms of herbivores, generally we've got the largest mammal, which are the elephants, and we've got the buffaloes, and we've got the kudus, and we've got the elands and the nyala, and so on.
All right, we'll now be crossing over live to Mount Hampton, where we're looking forward to post feedback from Rumbuzai Chikanza.
Of course, we are back again right here at Mount Hampton at the new Parliament building. And of course, we expect to be speaking to Professor Mthuli Ncube about the budget, the presentation that he just made of the 2025 mid-term review, budget review presentation. We will be talking to him shortly to help us unpack some of the issues that he discussed there in that august house. And of course, the several stakeholders really need to know what's the way forward from now, from what was presented. Of course, people have got various expectations towards what the budget could possibly channeled towards. And are people satisfied about what has been presented right now? If they have their concerns, they have all the time to review this presentation, the budget review presentation, and they will come back with their questions as well. But thank you so much for joining us. Of course, this is happening right here in Zimbabwe, where we get to leave no one and no place behind it. Of course, in that budget is talking of including everybody, leaving no one and no place behind. We're talking of urban areas being also part of this budget. We are talking of rural areas as well, talking about rural development, which is something that is the Second Republic is aiming towards as we look forward to 2030 vision. Now we will be talking to Professor shortly right here on ZBC TV. Let's welcome him as he comes right here. Very good afternoon to you, Professor.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for presenting that mid-term budget review presentation.
Yes, I was very pleased to present the midterm
Budget and Fiscal and Economic Review this afternoon in Parliament. I'm mandated to do that this time of the year, before the 31st of July, I must go before the people through Parliament to present, to them how government finances have been utilized, what projects have been done, and how the economy generally is doing.
And talk about the 31st of July. It's now 7 months down the line. And you spoke about how the budget has managed to make you spend about 35% of it, channeling it towards development and other things that are of concern in Zimbabwe. Then there's the 65% that is remaining. What can you say about that? What can we expect?
The fact that there's 65% remaining means that we have adequate resources to pursue and expand on various government programs to improve the services for our citizens. So we have enough resources. We'll be spending it as planned on infrastructure development, meeting the salaries of our civil servants and their allowances, equipping them with tools of trade so they can do their work. But infrastructure development, supporting social services, education, health, social protection programs like BIM, our war veterans, and so forth. All these are critical areas that this remaining 65% will support. We have to do that.
You spoke about the budget projection being low, below the projection for what you anticipated, and you said that is in local currency, and then in foreign currency you said it went slightly above the projection. Why is this?
Oh, it's just an exchange rate effect. When we did the budget estimate in November last year, we're using an exchange rate of $1 to 36 ZiG, but the situation has turned out much better. The ZiG is stable. We're averaging 26.7 ZiG per US dollar in the first 6 months of the year. So it's a better situation. So in US dollar terms, we've done very well in terms of our collections. And in fact, we think that we might even exceed the target in US dollar terms. But in ZiG terms, you then get that differential, but it's due to an exchange rate effect.
So the people of Zimbabwe, what can you promise them from now onwards as they go back and review this presentation, the budget review presentation? What can you say? What will you promise our viewers right here as they are watching?
We are staying the course. We are promising them macroeconomic stability of the exchange rate, lower inflation as we go forward. We are promising them more investment in various areas by government and by the private sector. We're promising them better service delivery, completion of all their projects that they've been waiting for, but also just better services around social protection provision. We're promising them all of that as we have written down in what they have approved as a national budget for 2025.
And lastly, at a scale of 10, we want you to rate this. Where are we in terms of working towards the journey to attaining Vision 2030?
You know what? Our gross national income per capita per person is now at 3,000. And this has been a remarkable journey. This is up from as low as 1,300 in 2018. From 1,300 to 3,000. That's a remarkable achievement. So I have no doubt we'll really achieve the upper middle income status by year 2030. We're going to work very hard to achieve that. It is doable.
Leaving no one and no place behind. We also noted that even the persons with disabilities are also included in these budgetary initiatives.
Absolutely. We're leaving no one and no place behind. The disabled, gender sensitivity, and the youth, for example. We're really leaving no one behind. We'll invest more in our devolution agenda so that we don't leave any place behind.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, that's Professor Mthuli Ngube right there, who is the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, whom we were talking to right here on ZBC TV. Of course, unpacking some of the issues that he presented in that August House. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us right here on ZBC TV. And in case you would want to watch again, you can always visit our Facebook platform, that is ZBC News Online. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rumbi Chakana. And of course, from the entire group behind the scenes, have a pleasant viewing.
Thank you so much there to Rumbi Chakanza giving us the rundown from Mount Hampton, of course, during the midterm budget fiscal and review there by the Minister of Finance, Honorable Mthuli Ngube. Of course, we are giving you, of course, all the updates in and around the country, especially for those of you viewing us on our social media platform at ZBC News Online. We always appreciate hearing from you. Keep sending us your questions, your comments, and your contributions. And of course, we'll now be extending more of our coverage to the Victoria Falls for the closing ceremony of the Conference of the Contracting Parties to the Ramsar Convention, COP15, where, of course, the key takeaways would be around the Victoria Falls Declaration, which has been brought forward, extending to be able to ensure that a global commitment towards the preservation and conservation of our wetlands is sustained. So we'll be looking forward to that update shortly. But however, we do implore you to stay with us right here on our ZBC News and Current Affairs as we'll be giving you more updates as we progress. Pleasant week for now. We'll be right back with more.
Good evening and welcome to the greatest show on earth. This is a people's game. They will be bubbling about this one for weeks and months to come.